Now, South Africa is moving to tighten food labeling regulations by introducing mandatory front-of-pack warning labels on products high in sugar, salt, as well as saturated fat. Civil society group, that's HEALA, is leading a nationwide campaign to raise awareness and pressure the government to act on long-delayed reforms aimed at curbing rising lifestyle diseases and shielding consumers from misleading packaging. How big of a problem is food labeling in the country? For more on this, let's speak to the Healthy Living Alliance, that's HEALA. The communications manager, Zukiswa Zimela, joins us now. Zukiswa, thank you so much for the time. Let's talk about why this is important. I just thought, if I grab something off the shelf and I look at the back of it somewhere and I just read, I could ultimately find all the nutritional elements there. I may not know what all of it means, but at least it's there. Why do we need a front of pack?
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me. If you do, in fact, understand everything that's at the back of the label, then you're better off than myself and millions of other South Africans. Unless you're a nutritionist or somebody who's really into nutrition, those labels are very complicated and very difficult to understand for ordinary people. And so the solution that we're asking for is for easy to read, clear warning labels in front of the packages, that make it easier for people to make good decisions.
Yeah, why? I mean, what would it change, though? Because when you're saying to yourself, I'm going to go buy a chocolate, ultimately, how many grams it has of sugar, saturated fats and salts, etc., is probably beyond you at that point because you're still going to get it anyway.
No, I mean we're not trying to prevent people from consuming these. We want people to be able to make better decisions. So something else that you don't know is that often these foods are labeled healthy, and I think a lot of people assume that things like juices are healthy or certain kinds of yogurts are healthy, when in fact they're not healthy. We have, a situation where those who are caring for people with some of these disorders and diseases want to make good food decisions, but they're being duped and they're not being informed accordingly. And so for those people, we want the regulation to pass so that, they're able to choose that. I mean, I think also some of the things that we pick up, we're not entirely sure what is in the food that we're eating. So you might assume, this is it's low in salt, but in fact, it's high in some other nutrient of concern. Wouldn't you, and I think I speak for a lot of South Africans, actually have the right and the power to make the decision for yourself?
Yeah, and it's elements like ultra-processed foods that you actually don't know what goes into them. And you're just hoping that it's just okay. And I suppose the real reasoning for some of these is because we're just wanting food to last a little bit longer, so we'll take whatever we can. And because it's just easier perhaps to prepare as well. What does this do for lower income households?
For sure. I mean, I think I want to explain that HEALA is forefront mission is to have food justice for all. And part of that is to have dignified decision making, to have access to good food, nutritious and affordable food. Unfortunately, the way that we're eating now has been transformed so much that our traditional ways of eating are slowly dying out. And with it comes these foods that, because they might be tastier and because they last longer and then because they're cheaper, are being flooded into our markets. So when we're talking about regulation, we're talking about the overhaul of the food space. And the first step that we can take is actually alerting people of what is in these foods. The power really is in the government's hand to ensure that we're not being taken advantage of because we don't have knowledge.
Yeah, how does this, would this reduce the ailments, the sicknesses, the chronic illnesses that we perhaps see as well in people as well across the country?
Yes. No, for sure. I mean, I think when we talk about obesity, overweight, and these non-communicable diseases, it's a very complicated issue. And HEALA isn't saying we're going to wave the magic wand and put labels on boxes and this is all going to go away. We're saying that this is a very low-hanging fruit intervention that can start to spark a conversation around, the food that is available for us on the shelves.
Yeah, look, I certainly have a bit of a sweet tooth myself then, and one wonders whether this might help me in any way. We've seen life expectancy, however, go up in this time as well. Is it a sense of saying, well, should we be as worried when we have life expectancy actually going up? People are living for a lot longer.
For sure, but what is the quality of their life in old age?
Mm,
You know, one of the things that I think we've normalized is that certain diseases will come to you no matter what you do, and that's not in fact true. I mean, we're losing years of people being able to be healthy and to work. We understand that people with chronic illnesses require, medication, they require caregivers, and in fact, just the quality of their lives is not as enjoyable as healthy people. Those who do pass away, in fact, we're losing breadwinners. And so we're leaving families without people to look after them. And what we're saying is it's an excellent thing that we're able to live longer, but we're saying we need to live longer and live healthier, because a healthy
mm.
nation is a wealthy nation.
Yeah. How close are we to getting these regulations ratified?
Not close enough. We wish it had happened yesterday. And so this is why we're embarking on these roadshows, to kind of nudge the decision makers in the government to ratify them. It's been 2 years, and you mentioned this, and I think, 2 years is too long for people to actually being denied this right, and the children not to be protected, because also these regulations will make it, difficult for these food people to target your children with
Yeah.
their fancy advertising and health claims. So it's a lot of us here who are sitting ducks, basically at the
Yeah.
mercy of these organizations who want to, feed us these foods that we don't know what we're eating.
Where's the pushback coming from? It's not necessarily the health department, I would imagine. Is it just these big corporations who are saying, well, what does this help us with? And this would detract from the brand, for example, and alleviate knowledge of and understanding of their products?
For sure. I mean, I think we need to understand, and nobody can deny this, is that these big food companies, their primary objective is to make a profit. And how can you make a profit when people overconsume? And a lot of people consume these foods. If that starts to go down and starts to diminish, it hits them in their bottom line. So the conversation could be around other things where they try to pretend like that's not the entire point. But if a CEO starts making money for these companies, and it's because they said we want to make people healthier, they're not going to stay there very long.
Mm.
So we can imagine who are the people who are the most resistant to this life-changing intervention.
Yeah, no, that certainly makes sense. All right, you're embarking on these roadshows. Do tell us more.
Yes, so we are going to be today, in fact, we're starting in Pretoria in Altridgeville. We'll be there for today and tomorrow, and then we'll move on to Giyani for 2 days, and the following week Durban. For more concise information, though, I would recommend people visit our website. It's heala.org, HEALA.org, and we have our timetable there on our website, so you're able to follow us around. And if you can, please join us, because we're taking signatures, and we want to actually hear from ordinary people, and uplift their voices and their concerns in this matter.
Yeah. Zukiswa, Zimela, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. I think a very important one in an era of such ultra-processed foods and MSGs and all of that really happening all around. The understanding is going to be so important, especially when one considers what we're getting even out of the spaza shops that we've, of course, spoken about even on this show as well. HEALA Communications Manager there, Zukiswa Zimela, talking about more transparency when it comes to food labeling.